The world was locked in a silent battle for over 40 years. No official declarations of war. No direct clashes between the two biggest superpowers. And yet, the world lived in the shadow of total destruction. This was the Cold War, a conflict defined by politics, nuclear threats, espionage, and proxy wars. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a battle not just for power, but for the future of civilization itself. It was democracy versus communism, capitalism versus state control, the West versus the East. But how did it all begin? And why did it never turn into a full-scale war? Let's uncover the power plays, global tensions, and the near misses that almost brought humanity to the brink of annihilation. At the end of World War II, the world was left in ruins. Nations struggled to rebuild, and two superpowers emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union. While they had been allies in the war, their relationship was built on necessity, not trust. And once the common enemy, Nazi Germany, was defeated, tensions between them became impossible to ignore. The United States championed democracy and capitalism, believing in a free market and individual freedoms. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, pushed for communism, a system where the government controlled the economy and society. This ideological clash turned into a real-world division, as Europe was split into two spheres of influence. The West aligned with the United States, while the East fell under Soviet control, separated by what Winston Churchill famously called the Iron Curtain. This division wasn't just political, it was a declaration that the world had entered a new kind of war. One fought in shadows, strategies, and global influence. If there was one thing that defined the Cold War, it was the terrifying reality that both sides had the power to wipe out humanity. The arms race began in 1945 when the United States dropped the first atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 4 years later, the Soviet Union shocked the world by developing their own nuclear weapon. From that moment on, both countries raced to build more powerful and devastating weapons. The United States developed the hydrogen bomb, capable of unimaginable destruction. The Soviet Union responded with the Tsar Bomba, the most powerful nuclear weapon ever detonated. Tensions escalated, and the world lived under the constant threat of nuclear war. The idea of mutually assured destruction, the belief that if one side launched a nuclear attack, the other would respond in kind, ensuring total devastation, kept both nations from pressing the button. But with so many close calls, the world wondered, how long could they keep that promise? Both nations fought through proxy wars, backing opposing sides in conflicts across the globe. In Korea, the US supported South Korea, while the Soviet Union backed the Communist North. The Korean War ended in a stalemate, with the country divided to this day. In Vietnam, the US tried to stop communism from spreading, but the Soviet Union and China supplied North Vietnam with weapons and aid. The war became a costly disaster for the United States, ending in withdrawal and defeat. The Soviet Union, too, faced its own Vietnam in the 1980s when it invaded Afghanistan. The US secretly supplied Afghan resistance fighters with weapons, leading to a long and bloody conflict that drained Soviet resources. These wars weren't just battles between countries, they were battlegrounds for ideology, each side determined to prove its system was stronger. But the real cost was measured in millions of lives lost. The Cold War wasn't just fought on Earth. It reached for the stars. The United States and the Soviet Union competed for dominance in space, using technology and exploration as proof of their superiority. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. It was a shocking moment for the United States, proving that the Soviets were ahead in space technology. 4 years later, Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth, cementing Soviet leadership in space. But America wasn't about to accept second place. NASA ramped up efforts, and in 1969, the US achieved what seemed impossible, landing a man on the moon. Neil Armstrong's words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," weren't just about space. They were a message to the Soviet Union: America had won the space race. Yet, this wasn't just about exploration. It was about military advantage. If a country could send rockets into space, they could send nuclear missiles anywhere on Earth. Space had become the ultimate battlefield for power. In October 1962, the world held its breath as the United States and the Soviet Union came the closest they had ever been to all-out nuclear war. It started when U.S. spy planes discovered Soviet nuclear missiles being installed in Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. The revelation sent shockwaves through the U.S. government. President John F. Kennedy demanded their removal, leading to a tense standoff. For 13 days, the world waited. Soviet ships carrying more missiles sailed toward Cuba, while U.S. warships formed a blockade, ready to stop them. The world braced for the unthinkable nuclear war. But in a last-minute diplomatic breakthrough, a deal was made. The Soviets agreed to remove their missiles from Cuba, and in a secret agreement, the U.S. promised to remove its missiles from Turkey. The world had barely escaped destruction. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was crumbling. Its economy was failing. Its people were restless. And its grip on Eastern Europe was slipping. Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet leader, introduced new policies, glasnost, meaning openness, and perestroika, meaning restructuring. But it was too little, too late. The Berlin Wall, the most powerful symbol of Soviet control, fell in 1989 as East and West Germany reunited. By 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed entirely, breaking into multiple independent nations. The Cold War had ended, and the United States emerged as the world's sole superpower. But was this really the end of Cold War tensions? The Cold War may have ended, but its impact is still felt today. The United States and Russia continue to have tense relations. Nuclear weapons still exist, with both nations maintaining powerful arsenals. Conflicts between democracy and authoritarianism are still shaping global politics. Even today, echoes of the Cold War can be seen in military alliances, cyber warfare, and international power struggles. The world may no longer be on the brink of nuclear war, but the question remains: have we truly left the Cold War behind? The Cold War was one of the most defining conflicts in human history, fought not with armies, but with influence, power, and the constant threat of destruction. If you found this video informative, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into history. What do you think was the most important moment of the Cold War? Let's discuss in the comments below. Stay tuned, because history is still being written.